Okay, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to Planning Committee on Thursday the 18th of January. Happy New Year if I haven't seen you before this year, before this day actually, sorry. I'm just going to start with the usual Chair's introduction. Welcome to today's meeting. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent for being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings, please. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and speakers are please reminded to use their microphone when speaking. And that's all. Okay? Thank you. Hello.
With your permission, a very brief point of order. Could I, on behalf of the committee, thank Councillor Agar for the regular provision of chocolate biscuits? Because, of course, the council used to provide them, but then I think some woke issue came up and we can't have them anymore. So I'm very grateful to Councillor Agar.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. I think, if we think back to Christmas, actually, the Christmas cake was delightful. So thank you very much. If you missed it, I'm sorry about that. Come to the Christmas meeting next year. Right, okay, so Margaret, do we have any substitutes, please, or any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have Councillor Lawrence for Councillor Alcott, and we've received no apologies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest, please, for any of the items today? No? Okay. So we're just going to go through the minutes of the last meeting. This was in the December meeting on the 14th of December. For members who were there, if we just go through them page at a time. So we've got page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're happy to receive that they're a true record. Thank you. We also have received the Conservation Advisory Panel minutes. They were carried out on the 5th of December, so prior to that meeting, and obviously includes all sorts of minor applications for interest as well. Okay, take it that everybody has read those. I'd like to thank everybody who came along to the site visit today, to the first item on the agenda. Thank officers. I think everyone found it extremely useful. So thank you. Public participation today. Margaret?
There's no public participation, Chair.
And public representation?
Yes, we do have a speaker for agenda item 834 Sidbury. It's the agent for the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if you'd like to come forward, please. Is it Mr. Bufton? And if you just wait until the officer's done their report. Okay, thank you. Okay, and Laura, this is your item. Thank you.
I think there might be a bit of a delay, Margaret. Do you have to click to start with? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. These applications are for both full planning permission and listed building consent for the erection of a 2-storey side extension to the existing Benedicto's restaurant at 34 Sidbury. The proposed extension includes ground floor coffee shop stroke bar with an ancillary back office accommodation and guest accommodation at first floor level. To facilitate the proposed extension, the proposals also include works to King Street car park. These include alteration to the existing pedestrian access, railings and boundary wall, along with the relocation of existing payment machines, signage, street furniture and lighting. The application is referred to committee as part of the site is owned by the City Council. The application site is outlined in red on this plan, with the red shaded area showing the location of the proposed extension. The application site is located within the city centre on a main arterial route into the city, on the corner of Sidbury and Edgar Street. Number 34 Sidbury has been operating as a restaurant for a number of years. Number 34 is also a Grade 2 listed building and located within the historic city conservation area. In terms of the overall site layout, the proposed extension would sit adjacent to the existing side of 34 Sidbury, facing the King Street car park. Now looking at the existing block plan, as you will see with King Street car park located adjacent to the site with the existing car park laid out. And now looking at the proposed block plan with the proposed extension in situ. The proposals in the long term do involve the loss of 2 parking spaces. The Highways Authority have been consulted on the proposals and have raised no concerns in this regard. The proposals also include the relocation of the existing payment machines. You will also see on the grey areas of the roof slope that the proposed extension also proposes solar panels on the inner roof slopes. A condition has also been recommended to provide details of the proposed solar panels. It is also advised that the existing refuse collection and storage arrangement is to remain the same to the rear of the building. Now looking at the existing and proposed plans of the side elevation, as you will see, the extension removes an existing single-storey extension at the site and seeks to introduce 3 gables of varying ridge heights, sloping down towards the rear of the site. The extension has been designed to slope down at the frontage of the site to ensure that the existing timber frame detailing remains exposed and visible. The proposals also include corner windows to the first and second floors. Following initial officer concerns, amendments were made to the proposed windows in the side elevation to introduce further articulation within the central gable in the form of 2 additional angled windows as well. Further improvements were also made to the proportions of the windows, but to both the rear and the frontage. Now looking at the front elevation facing Sidbury, as you will see, a visual gap has been maintained between the extension and the host listed building to ensure that the extension reads as a later addition to the building. Now looking around to the rear elevations, as you will see, there's a rear service door with angular windows again, below the largest gable ridge to the rear. Now looking into the building at the proposed section plans, so you can just see how it's laid out. As you will see, there's guest accommodation to the first floor and a bar and coffee shop to the ground floor. Now looking at the existing and proposed ground floor plans, additional seating and back of house accommodation here. And now the proposed first floor plans, a total of 5 ensuite guest rooms are proposed as laid out on the first floor. Now looking at the proposed 3D visuals of the proposed front elevation. In terms of the proposed materiality, white render with glazing and a blue bit plinth has been proposed to the frontage of the extension and side elevation at the first gable where the building turns the corner. This allows for the proposed front elevation to integrate with other buildings along Edgar Street, where a number of the buildings within the street scene are painted white. Red brick is proposed where the remaining 2 gables face King Street car park slope down. This is consistent with other materials found surrounding this elevation. The original proposals included a zinc tiled roof, however during the course of the application this has been revised following concerns of officers to a traditional clay tile to ensure that the proposed extension better integrates with the materiality found within the street scene. Now moving to a further higher view of the proposed extension and the roof slopes, just showing how they interconnect. As you will see towards the front of the site, this is where the proposed frontage is lowered to reveal those existing timber frame details. Now moving to a view of the rear of the proposed extension. And again, just showing how the proposed extension connects to the existing listed building to the rear. Now another view of the side elevation from a different perspective within the car park. This slide just shows some further detail of the treatment of the proposed brickwork, particularly with the angular windows and how the brickwork is proposed to be recessed in certain areas. Details materials condition has been recommended by officers to ensure that samples and details can be reviewed by officers and the conservation officer before their first use on site. Now looking at some photo montages showing the wider views of the proposals in situ. First view here from across the road, existing, now proposed. Now just a view looking across from City Walls Road, existing and proposed. Now looking further down to the extension from City Walls Road, existing and proposed. Now a view looking across from Friar Street, existing and proposed. Now moving to the view from King Street car park itself, existing and proposed. Now walking around the car park to the entrance from King Street to the rear of the proposed extension, existing and proposed. During the course of the application, concerns have been raised relating to parking and highway safety, noise disruption and the existing use of the restaurant. These have been considered in detail throughout the officer report. It is considered that subject to the satisfactory discharge and compliance with the recommended conditions, the proposals would not harm the residential amenity of existing residents within the immediate and surrounding area of the application site or result in a detrimental impact with regards to parking or highway safety. With regard to the design and impact on heritage assets, concerns have been raised by both neighbours and the Civic Society. It is recognised that the proposed development is of a modern design and is within a prominent gateway location within Worcester City Centre. It is, however, considered that the amended proposals have mitigated a number of these concerns, and overall, it is considered that the proposals would lead to less than substantial harm to the heritage, the listed building, and have a neutral impact on the conservation area. It is considered that any harm identified is outweighed by the public benefits of these proposals. The public benefits identified include the continued use of the Grade 2 listed building, remaining within a viable use consistent with its conservation, the creation of 5 full-time equivalent jobs along with benefits to the local economy. It is also considered that the proposed extension would make a positive contribution and preserve the Grade 2 listed building and conservation area. Historic England and the Conservation Officer have been consulted on the proposals, and both have raised no objections to the proposals on heritage grounds. So therefore, for the reasons set out in Section 8 of the Officer Report, officers have concluded that on balance, both the proposed full planning application and listed building consent applications are acceptable, subject to the recommended conditions set out in Section 9 of this report. I also just wanted to draw members' attention to the comments received earlier today, this morning, from the Civic Society. We've taken those as read, just wanted to make everybody aware. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Befton, you have 5 minutes to speak. I'll record your time, and when it gets close, I'll gesture that you're coming close to your time. Is that okay?
Thank you very much, yeah.
Okay, so as soon as you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, we were first approached by the applicant just over 3 years ago project, and fairly early on we were able to engage with the City Council and with Highways specifically, and with the Conservation Officer just to begin looking at the proposals. We were acutely aware, has already been picked up, that it's a gateway site into the city, and of reasonably poor quality at the moment because it has the car park and the end of the building. And we were quite keen, along with the applicant, that whatever we did actually served to enhance that, but not in any way detract from the existing buildings that are there, particularly the Grade 2 listed building that is the current Benedicto's restaurant. We worked closely with Paul Collins to develop some initial proposals on which this scheme is based, which adopted the idea of a sort of Burgridge plot, so a thin plot that goes back to the full depth of a thin building that goes back to the full depth of the plot, and the idea was that was an appropriate response. We also discussed at some length about the kind of the characteristics of the building and whether it should be a replica, if you will, of what is there at the moment, or whether it should be something that is more contemporary. Well, again, we looked carefully at the design guidance of the City Council in making a decision to come up with a building that responded, we believe, quite closely to the existing building in terms of its scale, in terms of materiality, its fenestration, etc. But nonetheless was a more contemporary interpretation of that. The applicant was very keen to extend the building to improve the long-term sustainability of the business. They're very aware that it's a fairly fast-moving industry in hospitality, and they've made a lot of changes, and we've been involved with those over the years to the existing restaurant. But it was kind of getting to the point where they were struggling to meet some of the needs and requirements that people wanted in terms of their dining experience. So to come before for a drink and to stay maybe after for a drink in a bar area, and the existing bar area really is the end of the entrance hall, really, and if that's being used, it creates a sort of quite a serious logjam in terms of coming in and out of the building. They have no disabled facilities as such in terms of WCs within the building, because we just can't make it work, and whilst that's acceptable within the nature of the building, it's not necessarily acceptable in terms of the business that they're trying to run. So this did give the opportunity as well to actually to revisit that and look at that. We've provided that as part of the proposals. Overall, the building offers the opportunity for them to build their business as it stands at the moment. So the hotel rooms that are allied to the restaurant accord with the economic assessment done by the City Council, which identified a need specifically for actually restaurants with some boutique rooms attached. And so in a small way, they believe that they're actually responding to that and meeting a need that exists there, as well as providing that service to people coming to the city. Overall, they're anticipating initially that this will provide up to 5 full-time jobs in the first instance, and hopefully, that will expand over time as the business develops to suit this. And so they've got the opportunity of the bar area, which services the restaurant, as well as additional space to provide sort of some small events and additional space in the kitchen to allow for the expansion of the offer that they've got. And particularly think things like longer-term storage for their deliveries and things like that, which they struggle with at the moment. I think they will have more opportunity to do that within the design. So there's been a lot of things to kind of balance coming up with the design, not just in terms of the architecture aesthetics of it, but the restrictions we have in terms of the car park and how much space can be taken up by the building, respecting building lines, and the obvious things to do with its location near the cathedral. We've worked very closely with Paul and Laura in the last stages. It's been quite a long time, but it's the last stage of this application, and we're satisfied with the results, and we hope you are too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have any members got any questions for the speaker, please? If we go, Councillor Amos, Agar, and then Sarah, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Bufton, Chair, could you go back on the pictures? Then I can direct my question in particular to Mr. Bufton. It's the one near the beginning, which showed the front view of the existing premises with the picture of the proposed new premises. It was one of the pictures near the beginning. I think that, yeah, I mean, that'll do, Chair, thank you. Okay. Mr. Bufton, I'm just concerned about the design. As you quite rightly said, it's a gateway. This is a gateway to Worcester for people coming down the A44 London Road. And this is the first thing they will see, apart from the awful motorcycle showroom. But of course, that's there, so we can't discuss that. There's nothing we can do about it. But that, to be honest, is a carbuncle. I think it's hideously ugly. And what concerns me is that it's not, I'm sure I will be told later that that's modern architecture. That's modern architecture. And I'm an old-fashioned so-and-so. But it's not modern architecture, it's lazy architecture. Because there's no design features to it, there's no features to it at all. It's flat, white rendered walls, white, so it stands out, with huge, massively, it would appear, tinted glass windows, right up against all the other premises going round the corner, with Tudor, mock Tudor, whatever, of different centuries, and it just doesn't blend in. I mean, are you seriously suggesting that that's the best your clients can come up with after 3 years of thinking? Because frankly, it is a disgrace to come into Worcester and see that. It completely gives people the wrong impression of the beautiful medieval city that Worcester once was.
Can I say something? Well, yeah, you're obviously entitled to your opinion, and I'm not going to attempt to change what's obviously a very forcibly held view. We believe quite strongly that this is a building that turns the corner, that holds the view, that responds very well to the existing buildings as they are. I appreciate that you and any number of people don't like styles of architecture. That's perfectly reasonable. Whether it's lazy, I think possibly is unfair. It's been a long process, and one where we have been very careful to respond to the context in which the building is located, and to cover out the requirements and the programme of the building that it contains. I mean, you said quite a lot. There's not a lot I can respond to. You don't like it, that's fine.
What I was trying to get at, Chair, you know, in some possibly way to move forward, is that there seems to be no compromise with what is already there. I mean, if your clients want something brand new and modern and striking, I can understand that, and you can put that in the middle of a field somewhere, and it will be modern and striking and whatever. But there's no compromise with the location in which it is situated. And as you quite rightly say, and I repeat, it is a gateway. It is so important that what is there does blend in, because what is there is attractive, but you're blocking it, what's there out. And you haven't even tried to compromise with what's there.
If I could just...
Sorry, Councillor Ames, was that actually a question or a comment?
Yes, the question was, why hasn't Mr. Bufton's clients made any attempt to compromise with what is already there?
Okay.
Well, we have. That building, I'm afraid, does pay respect to the context of it. It is sympathetic to the building that's there. It does not block out the view of that building. I mean, as you can clearly see, you don't just approach it from any building blocks out any building, depending on where you approach it from. The idea that a building next to a building blocks out a view of it is odd, frankly. That building cannot replicate a building that was there before, because the building that was there before was 4 times the size. It has to respond to it. There was no suggestion that we wanted to do it, that anybody wanted to do a pastiche, including the council's own policy. And so what we have done there is to pick up some of the design cues there, from the materials to the windows to the scale of the building, and we think we've done it successfully.
Mr. Bufton, could I then therefore build on that? Would you be able to explain to members the details and materiality, your choices, and what you have responded to, so we can make that very clear? So
the principal, the initial block, the gable at the front and the running around the face of the building is a render which picks up obviously the render of the two buildings next door. There is no one colour. Obviously, it could be white. It could be there's a slightly off-white and another off-white. It is just part of that palette as it stands at the moment. And we have a materials condition, and we can discuss in detail, you know, the actual tones of those things. But it reflects that the the head and sort of the windows picks up, and the scale just picks up that of the Georgian building next door, or the Georgian facade next door rather. The the pitch of the roof is the same pitch as on the existing building. It has clay plain tiles which will match the existing buildings around there. There are a variety of roof materials as we discussed at length, but that is the one that we feel is the most appropriate. As the building moves back, the gables, the rear two gables change to brickwork, and that picks up again at the back of these buildings. Those buildings are brickwork, so back into the car park, so it sits within the context of the buildings there.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Agar, please. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Bufton, for reassurance, you may be interested to know that not only did I go and have another in detail look at this area, despite the fact that I know it quite well, as most of us do, but you may be reassured that I'm not merely a traditionalist, that I actually am interested in blends of the old and the new, and I'll pick that up, Chair, if I may, later in the debate. But the question really, I think, for me is one of small detail, really, is that you need to get rid of some bespoke railings. A small section, I agree, but they are, I don't know if the Civic Society or the city actually paid for them, but they reflect the historic character of the area. They refer specifically to the Civil War, in fact, and they were designed for that location. So if you're taking those out, presumably we can reclaim them at some point, but are you willing to give a percentage for art or something so that, again, we can reflect the heritage of the area close to this location?
It's not something I can comment on because I'm not the applicant, but you know, we could obviously take that on board. I mean, if we can, if it's appropriate, we would be looking. We would like to reuse as much of the railings as we can. We're not looking at a sort of wholesale strip out and forget.
Thank you.
Councillor Sarah. Sorry? Yeah. Fine. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. When we were looking at the building today, we noticed over the doorway where that sort of grey section is, there is currently quite an attractive little section of moulded, I don't know what you call it actually.
Brickwork. I suppose.
Scooping? No, it's like a,
Yep.
yeah, like a Dutch house look.
Sort of pediment bit.
Yeah. So that's gone. I'm not happy about that particularly. Is there any way that that doesn't need to go?
There has been some discussion about this and about whether it was contemporaneous with the building that was there previously. It's not. If you look at the photographs, obviously at the level of the grey bit, which is glass, there was a window originally in the existing Angel Hotel. It was added when the 20th century edition was put on behind the doorway, in effect. So it was taken away. I think it looks better. You know, I don't think anybody would want to be hung on it for not delivering a scheme.
I thought it was quite nice, but anyway. At the moment, as you approach from the north of the city, the current wall is covered in banners, like, you know, advertising the restaurants and that sort of thing. As an improvement to your view of the city as you arrive, is there an intention to later on restore those banners to the new build?
I don't think there's room. I think the windows are there now on the current scheme. I think I don't think that there is physically room to replace the banners. Obviously, again, I'm not the applicant, but there's no sense that they would go back in the scheme.
I've got Councillor Cleary and then Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, my query is regarding the levels. I don't know anything about architecture, but it looks to me as though you've got a sloping roof and then a flat roof and then the front of the building. And I can't understand why there's that flat roof bit. Why doesn't the roof just slope to the front of the building? Whether that would need, maybe that changes the internals, I don't know. But to me, it looks a bit odd to have a sloping roof and then a flat bit before the front wall. And I just wonder what the purpose of that is.
And the parapet detail obviously is similar to the fact that the other buildings are parapeted, but I get your comment that the other roof sits in there. It sits in there because actually it runs back as three gables. The front of the building, like the facade building, is pulled around to hit it against the edge of the street. So it is a flat roof, so it's effectively just a wider parapet.
Yeah, and I suppose, Mr. Buffon, does that mean that we actually see more of the existing facade by doing that?
Well, by pulling the gable away, you still keep that view of the timber frame and the end of the existing building, so you don't. It's less hidden, I guess.
Okay. Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the that curved piece of brickwork, which I actually thought was quite attractive, and I thought it blended quite nicely between the older part of the building leading to the newer part of the building. So I thought it was just a nice, and look at this, to me. That's how it appeared visually to me, and I thought it would actually blend quite well. There's a discussion about it being removed carefully, but then it's not clear then who it belonged to and who would look after it and what's going to happen to it. So if that could be considered, I'd be most, it's like, is it just going to end up in someone's garden or something?
Right, yeah.
That's a comment made by the conservation officer. So I would like to know what the plan is to do with that. I'd actually like to see it retained because I think it's actually quite a nice feature, and I think quite a lot of that nice curve does appeal to the eye. Going on to another thing, is that have we maintained, you've got the flat roofs, is that to maintain the access to maintain the existing building?
Yeah, potentially you can get on top of the flat roof that sits behind the curved bit of wall that we've taken out. That will provide access to that timber frame, and that's probably quite essential really, because you need to be able to get up there to maintain it.
And the other one is a completely different subject, and I'm not sure if because I don't normally sit on planning. I'm very pleased to hear that putting an accessible toilet in. I think it's very important to have that sort of thing. Given that there are first floor rooms, it's obviously you can get wheelchair access, but is there any adaptation for disabilities within the rooms you're putting in? That would be nice to see for people who are less able.
We haven't gone that far down the route on that yet, and there's probably a little bit of design development to be done in terms of the final room layouts, as it were. Yeah, take them on board.
I also sit on communities, which Councillor Rios is the chair of, and there is an accessible site, and it's good they are promoting features across a range of disabilities, so not just a wheelchair or necessarily access. There's a range of disabilities that can be considered, and it would enhance the property and the people who would like to use it if they could be confident that they've got access and feel comfortable in the rooms.
One of the key things here was to make sure that there was both accommodation would come into the building and use the building at a level which doesn't exist at the moment.
Okay.
Councillor Udall, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. These may only be minor points, but just to settle my own conscience as I look at it. I'm looking in our report on pages 17 of the views from King Street Car Park and the view from City Walls Road. And I noticed on the gable end at the top, obviously you've got Benedicto's written and signage on the top of the gable end. Can you confirm two things? First of all, will that be illuminated in any way? That does concern me if it is. And secondly, there's no signage being proposed on these plans for the shop frontages on the ground floor, on the street frontages. I'm assuming that's going to continue to be the case, and there's going to be no signage included there. I'm also concerned about, when I look at the view from King Street car park, the large letter B on the plans. That is obviously a form of advertising, and is it necessary? Because that is a view which people will see as I travel down the road. And the large space next to it is obviously an invitation for graffiti artists. So I'm just seeking a little bit of concern and reassurance from you that there will be measures in place to prevent that from happening.
Thank you. I mean, at some point, we will be looking at signage for the building as a whole, and there will be an application for consent display that would go in. Obviously, in many ways, it was a placeholder to kind of say, okay, well, you know, we're going to need to put some manifestation on the glass so people don't walk through it. Could it be, you know, the Beaver Benedictos as well as it could be anything else? You know, you have a blank gable. What could go on it that was tasteful? So I don't know if there are any plans to illuminate it yet. Well, to be frank, we haven't had that conversation. But again, that obviously would be subject to a further application, and I'm sure that would be considered in the usual manner at that point.
And the white wall, which is adjacent to the King Street car park, which is an invitation for graffitiists.
We had quite a...
There's obviously means and measures which can be taken to prevent that. Maybe some of the railings which we talked about earlier may be put in place.
It's because it's quite tight there. We've looked at all sorts of ways to try and keep people away from the building, and it does start to compromise how you can manoeuvre around the car parks, but everything else. We had lots of conversations about it when we made some changes to the scheme to incorporate more render. I'm not being critical of anybody at all, but we had lots about the trade-off between the risk of render and brickwork, and the fact that, to be honest with you, a blank wall of any description is a broad invitation to graffiti. I appreciate that a white wall is a wonderful canvas, but the opportunity to be able to paint that out is probably better on a rendered wall than it is on a brick wall. And there are ways, coatings that we can look at that can mean that comes off easier. So we have to investigate all of that as we develop the design, because it's not in anybody's interest that it's graffitied, obviously.
Right, thank you. Councillor Cross, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming in and explaining to us, Mr. Bufton. I appreciate this, the sensitivities of the aesthetics as to whether to mimic or be bold and different. But I struggled a little bit personally to understand the aesthetics, because in some of the visuals the bricks looked very yellow and not very mixed, and in others they look a bit, quite a lot more mixed. So I'm sort of trying to get my head around the materials side of things, which I suppose is a modality, but it's an important thing to have right and to get clarity. So if you and your clients are amenable to a site mock-up and reference standard for materials and finishing standard, because one person's brickwork is totally different to another person's brickwork, and getting the detailing right is really important. With render, particularly in a sort of close to a busy road and high traffic, I'm keen to understand better what detailing there is to avoid drip staining on render that in about 3 or 4 years' time would be a pain for the client, and for anybody walking past, it just makes things look a bit shabby. There are numbers of projects I've seen, mostly results of value engineering, where materials change to being a render, and then all of a sudden, 3 years on, you're thinking, oh, that's a trick missed there. Comments earlier about graffiti, well, anti-graffiti coatings, renders, etc. I mean, the marketplace is full of treatments that work really very well against. That may also help with such drip staining as well. That may happen, especially when we're talking about road dust. So that's all things that can be sort of sorted out in detail. I'm pretty happy. I'm struggling slightly about the sort of sense of place of the building and how I understand about the massing and how this sort of fits in, using the gabled roofs instead of the pitch, not using a zinc roof, but going for a clay tile roof. It is a clay tile roof, yeah? Not a, yep, okay, great. But I'm just sort of slightly thinking this is a site of merit, and the building could just be that little bit sexier. From a design perspective, is it something that's going to be on a calendar? All this sort of thing. Or maybe there's treatments that can be done in terms of, nighttime and lighting. There's all sorts of wonderful things that can happen that transform a place so it looks different at nighttime, and that's the calendar shot that industry suppliers look for and all that sort of thing. I'm trying to understand which of the documents that we have before us are showing the brick colours, especially, so clarity about the colours and the willingness to agree materials and finishing details. To pin those down a little bit more would be good. And the final point would be, if you could explain to me, please, about the rainwater goods, how everything's draining, because I'm only seeing one downpipe, and it can make or break a facade if it's all in the wrong place. And so it's a minor point, but if we're talking aesthetics and a location, it can be an important point, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. So thank you.
I'll start with the brickwork. I think it's the difficulty sometimes of renders that things can get and reproductions, things can get distorted slightly. The colour of the brickwork is intrinsically supposed to match the existing brickwork on the building, so not the modern brickwork, but the more of a brindled older brickwork. So it is supposed to tie in, and obviously we'll be bound to provide samples of that as part of the conditions. To touch on your staining of render, I think you're absolutely right. It is all in the detail, and it's all really about how we're going to detail things like sills and runoffs from water where this can occur, and that's part of that process. Given the situation, that is something that can happen, probably not as quickly, but can happen on any material that's there. So we've been very mindful of that as we progress. Rainwater goods, the rainwater pipe, the single exposed rainwater pipe, is because that's the only one that can't be internal. So the remainder of the rainwater pipes to keep the facade as clean as possible. They will drain internally. The boxes that are accessible, it's not, shouldn't be problematic, but they are within the facade of the building, or the fabric of the building.
Thank you, Chair. Just for members, just picking up on materiality and just picking up on Councillor Cross's question, if I can just add something just to be helpful. Condition 4 obviously details out quite an extensive materials condition, which is probably more than we would normally see at committee based on the heritage aspects of this proposal. But as Councillor Cross has mentioned, sometimes there is the possibility of having a brick panel constructed on site, so it's not just your standard sample from your manufacturers, it's actually the construction company actually constructing a panel so that you can see the bricks, you can see the mortar joints, you can see the render panel, and you can provide that on site. So if members felt that was important in terms of the detail, that could be an addition to condition 4 that could be added if they so wish to. But obviously condition 4 is quite full as it is, but that's something for your consideration.
Councillor Round.
Thank you, Chair. Just have one question. Outside the existing Benedictos, you've got the outside space. And, is that going to be retained under the new scheme as well? Because it's really popular.
Yeah, it's intended to be retained.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Udall, you've got
Just
another question?
one simple question. Among the conditions proposed, there's some restrictions about deliveries at weekends, which will prohibit deliveries on a Sunday. You may not be able to answer this, but will this affect your client's ability to trade?
I can't answer that.
I didn't think you would be able to.
Building on that, Councillor Udall, building on that, actually, the hours is that I'm very aware that that location is near some schools, and there are particular peak times of traffic in that area. And I think that the hours need to reflect the additional difficulties with that. Okay.
Sorry, is it hours for construction delivery?
Deliveries, yeah,
Yeah,
construction
yeah,
deliveries, to
yeah.
avoid that peak time in the morning and in the afternoon when the school is open
Just
and
again,
shut.
as part of the construction process, we would do a risk assessment, and we would set out as part of that, in addition to what you guys asked for, in terms of being aware of the peaks and flows of traffic, particularly around school drop-offs and deliveries.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a comment, obviously, we're getting a little into detail in terms of conditions before the debate, but obviously that is something that can be considered as part of the overall debate if members are wishing to be able to support it. The details in terms of conditions are set out in detail, so it's not just the fact that the applicant would need to submit those as part of a construction environmental management plan. They are set, so it might be something that the members wish to have a look at specifically to negotiate that prior to the approval, but that's something that we can, that members can discuss as part of the overall debate.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Councillor Rance, you've got one more question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just on the subject of there is a school near. Of course, it's a very busy car park. Are we intending to move the pedestrian entrance and the car parking changes first? And how much will the construction spill out away from the... Obviously, if you're building a building, you need to be off it to build it. And that plan puts a pedestrian entrance very close to your building site. So I mean, presumably construction industry is used to this. Do you build it from the inside? Don't know how you're going to cope with the safety of pedestrians in a public space.
With regards to the phasing of the work to the new extension and the car park, there is quite a kind of complicated sort of backstory to this in terms of agreeing the sale, and there is a phasing which takes into account both works to the car park being the first phase to get it effectively ready, and allow for the entrance to be relocated. And then there is a sort of temporary intermediate phase which talks about how we maintain that access and keep it safe whilst the construction is going on, and defines the amount of car parking temporarily taken over as a contractor's compound, and defines the routes that the contractors can use for deliveries, etc., and storage. So there's been quite a lot of work done around that to make sure that is a feasible proposition that manages that, not just for the car park, but of course for the businesses that are also accessing off the back of that and the housing.
Okay, thank you. No further questions for Mr Bufton? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr Bufton. You're free to step back if that's okay. And now we've got Councillor Riaz. You're the local member.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and the committee for allowing me to speak today. I was really positive when I walked in here, and I'm not so positive in terms of that. Maybe we should have a sign on the door saying, "Oh, lose hope, all you who enter," you know, but hey, anyway.
Have a biscuit.
You know, really fascinating, obviously, discussion in terms of different viewpoints across the board, and you know, hopefully the committee can make an independent judgment on the information that's presented before you. Obviously, I'm the local member for that for the last 14 years, and obviously live in the patch since I've been here in Worcester, which is over 45 years. So I've kind of seen the development of the local area and particularly of this business. You know, completely agree. It's a significant application, not only for obviously the applicant themselves, but for obviously for the city being at a key juncture, and kind of what it represents, and you know, picking up some of the information regarding differences of you know, viewpoints as to the aesthetics of it is, you know, the planning guide kind of says beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? You know, a beautiful building, what what's beautiful to somebody is ugly to somebody else. So, you know, you could take that as you will. And I kind of made the judgment in terms of that it kind of reflects reflects Worcester in a certain way, you know, sort of beautifully understated. You know, if that kind of sense, we want to achieve, you know, grand designs, but actually with all the bureaucracies that goes on and different points of view, you know, working with the planners, etc., with the civic society and the conservation areas, you're reduced to something that's not going to offend. If you see what I'm saying, sort of blends in. So to a certain extent, the applicant, I believe, and the agent have been limited in what they've kind of do, not in terms of the design guide that they've given it to just kind of make it fit as well. Notwithstanding the fact, obviously, that you know, in order to have a gold-clad building or a significant building, the amount of cost that's going to be involved to make a wow structure within the in the Worcester area. So, I mean, I'm just referring to the report. I mean, officers have obviously highlighted in paragraph 212 of the NPPF, local authorities are called to look for opportunities for new development within conservation areas and settings of, and whether they enhance and a negative impact will be as a result of this building, and assessing that actually we're building on a piece of car park. You understand, we're not demolishing any existing buildings. Yes, accepted, we're covering probably a side of an existing historical building, but we're building on a car park that we've sold as a city council to the applicant to, you know, achieve his ambitions. Obviously, that fits in line with our policy and resources, aims and objectives of obviously and attracting development within the city and enhancing employment opportunities. So, you know, I believe, Madam Chairman, that the consideration given to the design and mass and styling and projection is totally sensitive and in line with the character of the area which is to be built on. Being in such a key park and key juncture, it kind of just about blends in. It doesn't, you know, kind of stand out. It doesn't, you know, cause offence. It's an additional building in terms of that, and that's really in terms of the actual design aspects, as much as I can say, is carefully understated in terms of that. Obviously, beautifully designed in the architects, and functional in terms of what they want to achieve. Just notwithstanding the design and development members, it also expands a key retail offer within the city, and it's a reflection of how leisure businesses are having to adapt their models, that they have a mixed use of obviously commercial, A3 leisure, A5 leisure, A3 leisure at the bottom, with residential of that, to make sure that there's a key mix of income opportunities there for the applicant, and not a material planning consideration at all, but I think there's it's really important to kind of reflect the personal journey the applicant has been on. I mean, I've known that restaurant since it was the Pescatori, and it's been changed a couple of times. Many of others would have probably known it in that time. I've never seen it not being trading, so it's always been a key business within the city that's been traded. Also the number of applications that have been made within in the actual building has been sensitively adhered to, or the planning conditions being met. So the applicant has gone out of their way to be as sensitive as possible within the existing building to, make sure all the architectural features are in line and keeping with that. So, I mean, the 16 years or 17 years the applicant has been within the city, this is a product of his lifetime's work and achievement that he's put in and invested within the city, and shows a significant commitment by him to invest his, lifetime savings, I'll probably say, to back into to this building, so he can expand it for future generations, and make sure his family and their family continue to run it and be a valuable asset to the city. So I think that's a significant, although it may not be a material planning condition, but a key saying that Worcester people that have invested into it love it so much, want to reinvest back into the city. I mean, having looked at the planning conditions, Lynn and I, both being local members, had obviously significant concerns in terms of impact on local residents as well, and there was some confusion around obviously access to the remaining properties on Edgar Street, which we believe we regularised through the planning process and make sure that was organised. So as well, so that any impact on development wouldn't affect those residents as well. So we've conducted those conversations as well to ensure that you know, what takes place here is in that obviously there's going to be a significant period of disruption during key periods for us within the city, but believe that's going to be the minimal and a rigorous plan that we can hold them account to. We can, you know, hold them to account through the conditions and that. Obviously, we're going to be compensated as City Council for some of the losses in terms of losing the car parking spaces as well. So hopefully, you know, there isn't a net loss in terms of any financial considerations from our point. Finally, I mean, are the looks a significant enough planning reason for us to refuse this application today in terms of that? I mean, and what will it add to the city in terms of our leisure offer? I don't think it disrupts any significant blocks any significant views. It is really about in your minds, members and chairman, about whether it looks good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riaz. I'd just like Steph to clarify something, please, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make clear that the land currently owned by the City Council hasn't yet been sold to the applicant. I mean, it's not actually a material planning consideration, the ownership of the land, but just to make that clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Riaz. You're free to step back if you'd like. I think we should start some debate and questions, please. If I start with you, Councillor Agar, thank you, and then Councillor Udall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to return to a point I skated over in my question, which is that old and new, whether you blend or whether you don't, or what you do about it. I mean, most of us will be very familiar, I suppose, with examples. The example in Birmingham, where the spire of St Martin's floats above the modern walkway. Very dramatic presentation of the architecture. And what it actually does is dramatise the contrast between the old and the new. This building doesn't do that. I think what it does seek to do is to blend a certain amount. And there are various ways, obviously, of treating that distinction. I think what this one tends to do from a structural point of view, having had a good look at the side and the back views, I think it quotes the medieval and Renaissance rear of the building rather well because of the gables and the recessed windows and so on. I think that works really well. It would work even better, I think, if there was a lot more brickwork involved rather than the render. But I leave that to our reserve matters and our planning officers to safeguard. I think that's possible to do. It's not offensive, as our local councillor has said. I think actually it's good enough. That's how I feel about it. And if it were more brick, I'd be a lot happier because it would reflect the rear and sides of the buildings rather than the Georgian facades, which we've really been concentrating on. And as we all know, Georgian facades are facades. The rear of Georgian buildings tends to be pretty awful because it was all about social posturing and status. So, if you're looking at a Georgian close, and I agree that the facade is that of a Georgian close, it was built onto older buildings. And we have seen that the gable end of the existing building has been preserved. And so you can still see that structure. So I think it's been sympathetic in a number of ways. So I think on the whole, I'm probably going to approve this, but I would want to see that small detail. It may be small to some, but I'm sure it will be looming large in the imaginations of the civic society in particular is that section of bespoke railings that will be removed. And what I'm going to suggest is that we reclaim those. I don't know if they can be reused anywhere else where it is relevant to reuse them, but I would actually want to ask a small percentage for art. And I would want a condition of that, because I think if you're removing something that's been paid for, it's been put there as a gesture to the heritage of the area, that we should do something about that. And I think a small percentage for art, which reflects the value of what's been removed, should actually be something we should consider.
Through you, Chair. In terms of a couple of things that you've raised, Councillor Agar, which I can respond, I'll go backwards. So in terms of the railings, if they were to be reused, that could be an additional condition that members wish to consider. And again, if members wish to have some artwork provided within it, that could be a condition as well, in terms of, rather than a percentage, which would normally be the amount of the development, but actually a scheme for the provision of public art. I'm sure that would be something that, if members felt, that balanced it either way. Just one more thing, if I can, in terms of the amount of brickwork versus render, obviously what drawings have been provided are the drawings that have been provided. In terms of the materials, we are looking at the types of those render and the types of those brickwork. If members wanted additional amount of brickwork, that would need to be a revised plan, which obviously is not before us today. So that would be something that would need to be a separate element if members wish them to come back as a revised plan. But in short, we're considering what is there today, whether that is acceptable or not, and then we can move on from there.
Very much happier with a condition regarding the art, if we could get that wording. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Councillor Agar. There's a really charming photograph in the Heritage Statement analysis, which shows the old Angel Hotel, actually. And I think some reference to that, of what was, you know, or some of the archaeology on the site or something would be very appropriate. I've got Councillor Udall next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I agree with everything which Councillor Agar and yourself have just said. And not only to mention the old Angel Hotel, it's also a site very important in the history of Worcester, for the Battle of Worcester as well. So some information about that might be useful for historical purposes. I actually find this application quite attractive. I do like to see the blend of the old and the new, and of course, but beauty is always in the eye of the beholder. I accept that. Some people don't find me attractive, and I can't help that. Whereas, same with Councillor Amos, some people don't find him attractive. Anyway, but that's a matter for debate and personal taste. I always, when it comes to a planning committee, I like to say yes, but rather than no, because. And on that grounds, I think we do have to look a bit more detail at the conditions. You yourself, Chair, raised one of the issues which I was going to raise about the hours of delivery. Personally, I would like to see those tightened up a little bit. It is a very important area of the city, and it's very traffic sensitive. So I would like to see restrictions between 0900 and 1500 hours rather than the times listed. And I have got a bit of a concern about what I consider to be a contradiction. And if I'm looking at page 39 of the conditions, conditions 6 and 7, where the conditions will state during construction there will be no delivery on a Saturday. However, we're prepared to say when it's operational that deliveries could take place on a Saturday. I think if we're trying to keep the residential amenity of the area, we should be consistent and have no deliveries post-construction on a Saturday as well. That may affect the trading ability of the client, of the applicant, but to be honest, I don't really care that much. I think the importance locally is that it should on a Saturday be a tourist area, not a delivery area. And the other condition which I would like to see some comment about and some responses to is the concern which I have, which was highlighted in my questions about illuminated lighting and signage. I expect that to come later in some of the more detail, but I would like to see a condition which would, unless I've missed it, which explicitly denies the applicant rights to have illuminated lighting on that gable end.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to provide some comments. In terms of the delivery hours, that's entirely in the committee's gift. What I would offer that if we got to a position where the committee was proposing this and recommending it, that it would be for delegated authority to approve, subject to chair and vice chair, to agree those hours around what the committee wishes are, but also in consultation with the applicant to make sure that we don't end up with a permission that is not implementable for them. In terms of the second point, which was the condition around, sorry, just remind me, lighting and advertisements are a separate entity, so that would need a separate application. However, if members were significantly concerned about certain advertisements which can be put on without requiring advertisement consent, it could be a condition that members wish to impose, removing any rights to advertise without a consent from the local authority. So that could be something that members could control, and then any application would need to come for consideration to the planning authority.
I'm seeing quite a few nods there.
Okay.
Cool. About half the committee. Okay, great. I've got Councillor Cross now, please, and then Councillor Amos. I've moved on.
Thank you, Chair. May I just check with officers? In the report it says loss of 2 car parking spaces. From the site visit, there was a motorcycle parking space which it appears would also be lost. And my question is whether that either should be clarified as in the documented that yes, that will be lost as well. Should that be reinstated elsewhere, or could that be reinstated elsewhere on site? I know that motorcycles are more effective than cars in terms of not adding to congestion. And I very much echo the calls for history panels or information boards or art that reinforces the sense of place and history and purpose of the area. So thank you very much.
Through you, Chair, Councillor Cross is correct. When we were on site, it was very clear that there will be a motorcycle space next to the pay machines that will be lost. It would be a matter for the City Council as part of their car park operational reorganisation of where they replace those motorcycle spaces. But to clarify, yes, it is 2 car parking spaces and that motorcycle space that we saw.
Councillor Amos, please.
Thank you, Chair. And perhaps I could apologise to Councillor Riaz in advance for adding to his sense of imminent depression. But I do want to put a contrary view, Chair, because I think it's important. I mean, over the decades, I don't think this city has looked after its heritage very well. We all know the buildings we wish weren't there, but they weren't put up that long ago. Some of us hope they will fall down, but unfortunately they're not falling down. And any council that could agree to build a multi-storey car park in Friar Street really needs to look to itself as regards the future. So I think that the visual aspect of this is important. And it is important because I actually walk past it about perhaps 4-6 times a week as I walk from home down London Road to the Guildhall. So, and that of course is the most prominent entry route to the city. And it has one advantage, which is that as you're coming down the hill, you've got the view of the cathedral, which is central to the city. And it's beautiful. Marred, of course, by whoever those idiots were who allowed the motorcycle showroom as you come down into Sidbury. So that's the first blot on the landscape. But then it's not too bad. You can still see the top of the cathedral. But what we've now got, apart from the medieval view, and I agree with other colleagues when they said, white render without brick. I mean, brick would soften the blow, I think, to some extent, but obviously that's not before us today. And when I say ugly, Mr. Round and I often disagree on the definition of ugly, but I think this is a good definition of it, because personally, I could actually have designed this building, because all it is, the bit we saw, is 2 flat walls, big holes for massive windows, and that's it. There's no feature to it at all. And I'm not against blending, as Councillor yourself, blending old and new, because we often have to do that. Take London, for example. I mean, you've got the traditional skyline, and then you've got the Gherkin, the Cheese Grater, and the Shard. Completely original and different buildings, but they're beautiful. They add to it. a city I know very well, San Francisco, constantly with the traditional and really the latest technology in newness. But there, new is beautiful. New doesn't have to be ugly. That's the point I'm making, Chair. In San Francisco, you've got a changing skyline, but all the new additions are individual features, and they're not just white render square blocks. That's the point I'm trying to make. So I do urge the committee very carefully to consider this is a seminal decision because we don't have many accesses to the city with views to the cathedral behind it. Once this is gone, it's gone. I have no objection in principle whatsoever to the development of the restaurant to increase its capacity. I walk past it frequently, and certainly in the evenings, tables outside it, it's full, it's busy. Good luck to them. I want them to expand. But it doesn't have to be done in a way that creates a problem to the appearance of the whole area. So you can blend the old and the new. I say there's new that's ugly and there's new that's beautiful, and I've given some examples of that, I think. The second issue, which of course nobody's mentioned, and the Department for the Department for Highways and Transport, is not here today. But obviously officers agree with their recommendation, so perhaps I'll direct this through you, Chair, to the appropriate officer. I see that we've now got 5 hotel rooms. That's obviously 10 people. Got 5 staff, 5 people. We're losing 2 car parking spaces, and they think there's no problem with the parking or congestion or travel at what is the busiest, most sensitive junction in the city. It's not going to cause any problem. But my question, it's a rhetorical question, Chair, so you don't have to ask an officer to answer it. But given that the restaurant is busiest in the evenings, and given that there is no bus service, meaningful bus service, after 6 o'clock, what is the public transport option that's available? Well, in fact, I will ask Mr. Round to answer that at the end when I've finished, because then it gives him time to concoct an answer. So to be fair to him, they've got 2 minutes to come up with an answer. And the final point, Chair, is, and I think colleagues have raised this, the hours of construction. I think we've got to be very careful here, as I just said, as I know from a previous role. This is the busiest but most sensitive junction in the whole city. We cannot have construction across the footpath or in any way blocking that, because London Road is the most sensitive road in the city. Anything up there has knock-on effects all the way down to Sidbury. Equally, anything in Sidbury has knock-on effects all the way up London Road to beyond Waitrose and up towards the motorway. It is that sensitive. So we must ensure there is no problem, no blockage. You know, we know developers of old. They'll give a commitment, these are the hours, and then we'll get complaints that somebody came, oh, we're just half an hour early, and they left the engine running because it was cold, and all the rest. We've seen it all before, and the time you get there, they've gone. But the time you get there and they've gone, you've caused half an hour of disruption. And at peak times, it is literally gridlocked. So that's the risk we run with this unless we're going to stick to the rules. So I think there's not much more I could add. But in terms of patrons of the restaurant, in terms of guests at the hotel, in terms of customers, I don't know what they're going to do for public transport in the evening, because we're actually reducing the capacity given what's in this report. So I think I'll leave it there, Chair. It is a huge disappointment, to be honest with you, that one iconic site is going to be turned into really a best, let me be kind, at best a featureless carbuncle. That's the best I can call it. But if that's what committee is going to vote for, fine, I'll be in a minority. But anyway, Mr. Round can now answer my question about he's had 2 minutes to answer my question about there's extra transport provision, because it says in the report there's loads of it, in the evening when the restaurant's busiest and there's no bus service.
Paul, would you like to? Yeah, and then you.
Through you, Chair, in terms of the responses, it's very clear from what the Highway Authority have set out that they don't consider that the loss of 2 car parking spaces is detrimental to the overall provision of car parking within the city. In terms of public transport, Councillor Amos is absolutely right that there are times within the evening where the bus services are limited or non-existent. but there are other ways of being able to get there, and Councillor Amos has also indicated that he walks to the Guildhall. So there are opportunities for local residents to be able to get into the town through walking, through cycling and other means. So in terms of the sustainability, it is in a sustainable location. And yes, we can't always rely on public transport. And this committee has heard me say this and heard councillors say that actually we haven't got the best public transport. But actually what we have got is a city that is well connected in other means, not only throughout the day for public transport, but also throughout the evening. So yes, it's not the best, but actually we have got a provision that this development isn't going to cause any difficulties in terms of the overall offer that exists at the moment, and the loss of 2 car parking spaces is not detrimental based on the assessment from the Highway Authority.
Thank you, Chair. Well, that's a good answer, Mr. Allen, but we're not just talking about, remember, the loss of 2 car parking spaces, are we? We're talking about the addition of 10 guests, 'cause 5 rooms, and 5 extra staff. I mean, the staff have got to get there somehow as well. I mean, I'm athletic and fit and young and trim, so I could jog up and down London Road. It's no problem for me. But most people aren't. So I mean, I just do despair that we seem to be just not being realistic about these things. Be realistic and make the provision, or be honest and say we can't make the provision, so it's going to be worse for you than before. But don't say it's going to be better when we know damn well it's not, given what I've just said.
I think, Councillor Amos, we've heard you. But also, you know, I really do think that city councillors who are county councillors need to work harder to get these bus services back for everybody. We have this on every application. We all think it. We all agree with you. So let's... Exactly, particularly things such as the park and ride, Councillor Edel. I'd just like to give a slightly different perspective for the architecture, I think, and it's not that I disagree with you. It's that when you started talking about things like the Gherkin, there's a difference with architecture, in my opinion, where you have outstanding standalone buildings that end up in architectural magazines. This site, I don't think, is that site. I think this site is tricky, actually. I think one of the tricky things about it is the staircase going up to the first floor, which creates this overhang at the front, and I think that's been a difficulty for the design. But what the drawings haven't really shown is the large windows are actually going to be alive with people. And actually that ground floor, I think it's almost like a picture window, and the white render, I'm wondering whether it's actually just going to be a backdrop to this really vibrant, you know, window, which is almost like a piece of art, of moving art, of people sipping, enjoying their drinks and enjoying the business. This is what's going through my head, anyway, from an architectural point of view. I don't think every building needs to be a shouty building. I think it does have to be a good quality building. I think this building is all about detailing, quality of materials, and how it's finished. Councillor Agar.
Thank you, Chair. You made some of the points for me. I mean, I do think that it's about quality of materials. And I think we need to be very careful of those when we start to look at them again, behind the scenes as we do. And I know, Councillor, that you're an ardent pedestrian, as am I. And I totally agree that we need better bus services. It's very obvious that we do. I often have to sort of either catch a lift or get a taxi home from these meetings if they last slightly later than we might expect. But I don't think we can actually refuse a city centre building on the grounds that we haven't got a good bus service to it, unfortunately. But there you go. So I think we should approve it.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to the Twirly Dutch bit, please. Was this part of the Angel Hotel? Could I ask anybody who knows?
I think when we were looking at the detail and we were discussing with the Conservation Officer, I think it was determined that it wasn't originally part of the Angel Hotel. It was something that, when they demolished the Angel Hotel, was added on as kind of a feature to finish the building. So I think that was why we didn't insist on its retention, and the Conservation Officer didn't, is because it wasn't the original part of the Angel Hotel. It's sort of a finishing off piece, really. Hope that helps.
Okay, thank you for that. I still think it does finish off that section of the building, and although it's only a small thing, I don't know if it can be considered to be retained within the design without making it a different plan entirely. And I've just got a couple of other little things. I think in general, I agree with, if you like, yeah.
Through you, Chair, it's pretty much the same as I answered Councillor Agar before in terms of what is before members. Obviously, there is that normal choice that members have. They can approve the designs before them, they can refuse the designs before them, or if they feel that there is something that needs to be amended so that they can support it, it could be a delegation subject to the Chair and Vice Chair for a revised plan that includes a certain element. So obviously those are elements that you can do, or you could defer it to be able to see the design again, but obviously that opens up back to committee for new debate. So those are the options that are before members as part of the overall debate.
Yeah, I think that that sounds like a good option as far as I'm concerned. Could I ask a general question? Highways come up with their adjudications on traffic impact all the time. They put down a figure and that estimate is never checked in retrospect to say, you know, was that an accurate figure or not? So in terms of like detriment incrementally, you never get to see any of that. Whatever is the status quo, that's what you've got and you're stuck with it. Yes? So I want to understand whether highways, I'd like to see some examples of where highways, given that this is their gift, you know, everything's okay at the moment, so to speak, when do they refuse things on the grounds of highways impact? And you don't need to answer that now, but I'd love to hear some historical situations, circumstances where highways actually said, no, this is going to be unacceptable.
Through you, Chair, just as a response, let's take that outside the meeting and we can have that discussion.
Just to say, in general, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I don't think it's a spectacular building. I think it's probably, on balance, inoffensive. And it is difficult to fit old with new, which I don't mind in principle. So I think I do support it.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Round now, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, looking at the application, it wouldn't be my first choice of design in terms of how it looks, but that is what is before us at the Planning Committee today. And we have to take on board that the applicant and his agents have spent a number of years working with officers to get a design that would work well with old and new as best as could be delivered. And I think at the end of the day, we have to say that this is a long-established business that's given a commitment to the City of Worcester to develop, extend, employ, and you know, if we refuse this application, we're in danger of jeopardising a business that can't develop and expand. And we as a city should be encouraging as many independent businesses as possible to extend and develop. So I think I'm going to give my support to this application.
Thank you, Councillor Round. I've got Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question back to this small but much commented curved section in brickwork, page 30, 7.22. So when I looked at that on our site meeting, I wondered whether that served for stability purposes for the, I always get this wrong, the western end of the Georgian facade. So I was just wondering whether that had a purpose, whether that purpose is relieved by the additional steelwork and supports that's going to go in with the design. But yeah, it seems a little feature. When you look at the viewshed heritage statements and viewshed analysis, you can see the original Angel Hotel door, which is what's there and been retained. And I'm just wondering whether that curved section is serving that purpose. So it'd be a shame to take it away and then find, oh dear, we've got a problem. So the delegated, I'd be happy to support a delegated chair, vice chair to look into options for retaining that. So I'd support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Do I have any other questions? Oh, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. On the site visit, I was concerned by the fact that one of the car park spaces that's going to be lost is actually a disabled bay. Will there be another disabled bay put into use in another part of the car park?
Through you, Chair, we haven't got those details before us. That, again, would be something for the City Council to consider as part of their overall provision as part of the car parking, but that's certainly not before us today in terms of that overall provision.
Do I have any other comments, Councillor Udall?
I would like to propose that we accept this recommendation with some added conditions which we've, I think, talked about. And those conditions will be about the artistic issues which have been raised by Councillor Agar and myself, specifically also bearing in mind that this is very close to the location of where Cromwell's headquarters were during the Battle of Worcester and Cromwell's house, which was demolished in the 60s. And some recognition of that, I think, may be useful in any future designs and artwork which takes place there. I'd also want to see if we can have some conditioning about illuminated lighting and, on the side of the building. Yeah. And I think it would be wise to delegate to the Chair and Vice Chair and officers some discussion about the hours of deliveries and trading on the weekend as well. And I think it's got to be open to compromise. I don't want to put any restrictions on which are going to damage an individual's business, but I think permitting deliveries all day on a Saturday may be counterproductive to what is required locally, especially if it's considered inappropriate during delivery, during construction at times. So I'd like some control over that, but I'll leave that into delegated powers. With that, Chair, I will happy to move acceptance of the recommendation.
Just clarifying, Councillor Udall, in terms of that you're seeking to approve the design as it is, with delegated authority to Chair and Vice Chair for additional conditions to both the planning and the listed building consent, which will have to be taken in separate votes and separate movements, but for a brick panel along with mortar joints, so that's in addition to condition 4 and 3, that discussion over delivery hours, and noting the committee's concerns over school hours and Saturdays, the inclusion of a condition for public art, including the reuse of railings where possible, and a condition for the removal of rights to display adverts without consent from the local authority. I believe that's what.
Yeah. And have we got the additional one for the brick panel as well?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Lawrence?
Could we add the bit about the curve? I'm sitting here looking behind you and there's an angular edge and there's a curved edge, and I'm finding the curved edge much more attractive.
So through you, Chair, that's a matter for Councillor Udall as part of his motion of whether he wishes to accept that the delegation would include a revised plan to include the retention of the curved element, and whether he's willing to do that, or whether he's accepting it as the motion to approve it as the drawing stands today.
Chair, as Karen terrifies me, and I fear the consequences if I say no, I'm more than happy to accept that as an amendment and move on that basis. She's terrifying, believe me.
So through you, Chair, just to clarify so that all members are clear, because we want to make sure they're clear in terms of what the motion has been put forward. So it's delegated authority to the Director of Planning and Governance in consultation with Chair and Vice Chair for approval subject to a revised plan to retain the curved element which we've discussed above the entrance doorway, and the conditions that we mentioned in terms of materials, delivery hours, public art, and removal of advert consent.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Happy to second it, Chair, on those terms.
Thank you, Pat. Okay. Based on that, would you like to move to a vote? Because we've got a proposer and a seconder. Yeah. Seeing nods. Okay. Can I see all votes in favour then, please? Thank you. Votes against? And that's everyone, isn't it? Okay, so that has carried. We're just going to move now to the listed building consent. Yeah. Is there anything you want to say?
No, members, the considerations in terms of the listed building consent are obviously less in terms of the overall aesthetics of the extension, but more the physical attachment and the works to the building. But the conditions would be very similar in terms of, as you've seen, but also the additional conditions in terms of materials, the revised plan. The elements of delivery hours, public art and removal of advert consent are purely for the full application and not for the listed building consent. So the recommendation for clarity would be delegated authority to the Director of Planning and Governance in consultation with Chair and Vice Chair, subject to the conditions within the report and the additional, the alteration to condition 3 about the brick panel and mortar joints and the revised plan for the retention of the curved element.
Yeah.
We just need somebody to propose that in a second.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed the heritage statement, actually, with all the detail in for somebody who doesn't really know the history of the site. I found that quite joyful. And clearly you've been working with our conservation officer, which makes me feel a little bit, gives me a bit of comfort as well. Should we move to a vote on that, or do we need some? We need a proposer. Okay, so I need a proposer, please. Councillor Cross. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Udall. You're on good. You're on good form today. Very compliant. Great. Shall we move to a vote then, please? We're going to start with all votes in favour. Thank you. All votes against. Very good consistency. Thank you. Yeah, we're just going to have a 5-minute break, please. Thank you.
surface and provision of new goals and basketball hoops. Replacement polymetric surfacing, the colour of which is to be agreed prior to its installation. The formation of a new pedestrian entrance gate and pathway to the north and west of the Mugger compound, and provision of a new youth shelter, which are all labelled on the drawing. No, it won't work. There we go. The images show how the site and the existing facility are viewed in their context, from a bird's eye view and at street level from Midland Road. It's viewed alongside the hub's other facilities and adjacent uses, parking areas and buildings, with roads and buildings intervening between it and the nearest residential properties. It's considered that in this established context, the proposed enhancements would not have a harmful impact on neighbouring uses or their visual amenities of the area. To conclude, the principle of the enhancement of community facilities is supported by local and national policies, specifically policy SWDP 37, which states that the enhancement of existing facilities will be permitted, and paragraph 97D of the MPPF, which confirms that planning decisions should ensure that established facilities are able to develop and modernise and be retained for the benefit of the community. The proposal seeks to deliver the improvement of an existing facility and therefore is a social benefit. Having assessed the proposal's impact in its specific context, it's considered that there would not be any demonstrable adverse impacts. No objections have been raised by Worcester Regulatory Services from a noise and nuisance perspective, or from the local highway authority, or indeed any local residents or adjacent land users. It's therefore recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions as set out in the report and in the update in the late paper. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Charlotte. Councillor Riaz, if you want to start.
Thank you, Councillor Lewing and Madam members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Hopefully, this is pretty straightforward, but obviously it's in the gift of the committee to make a decision. Can you hear me okay? Is that fine?
Yep.
No problem. Just to put obviously I'm here in favour, as the local member, in favour of supporting this application before you. I mean, since before the pandemic, parents and youths have been contacting me regarding the poor state of the pitch and the facilities at Horizon, and many kids have stated that the service has led to many slips, injuries and falls that have resulted in injuries and broken bones. Although technically we've done an assessment and it's kind of deemed safe in official terms, in reality the surface has deteriorated and isn't really fit to be confidently running around in the slightest of inclement weather, whether when it slightly gets icy or there's a bit of rain. People don't, kids especially, don't feel confident to kind of run around it. During the COVID pandemic, we've had several incidents of obviously antisocial behaviour around there, which led me to form the Perryfields Community Association, in which I managed to get external agencies, the police and Community First and other organisations to work together with the local youth to come up with a list of things that they've been missing out on, quite frankly. And one of the things was that come out of that was that they needed a facility that they could be confident in running around in and being able to play the sport that they'd want to play. And don't forget that this facility is in the heart of three local schools. We've got a special needs school, we've got a Newbridge school, and we've got Stanley Road School. So there's a multitude of public buildings within the area, and a real hub for kids to kind of use. So it is a well-used facility. The perception has always been, certainly from the youth, that the level of investment within the area isn't comparable to maybe some other parts of the city, and the granting of this planning permission and the realisation of this facility, when it eventually gets done, will be a sort of moral victory for them, and they'll see it as a massive boost in terms of actually the City Council is hearing their concerns and actually addressing them. And, finally we've managed to, through, regardless of, the 4 or 5 years that it's been taken since they first raised their concern, that it will be a massive victory for them in terms of taking that forward and to bring it to some way in not towards parity, but one step closer to parity to other facilities that we have within the city. So I mean, for the final point of it, it's we're not expanding it, we're not extending it, we're just improving it. So I really, and from a obviously play perspective and a sports health and well-being perspective, it's a wonderful improvement to a neglected facility within the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riaz. I mean, I agree. I think it's really positive that despite the finances of the City Council that we are looking to maintain important play provision in the city. Has anybody got any questions now, please, or comments? Councillor Agar? Oh, Councillor Lawrence, whichever you prefer.
Sorry, I think she did before me.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Patton. Thank you, Chair. It's a question. I mean, I'm not familiar with polymetric surfaces. I read further there's a concrete surface and there's a tarmac on top of concrete. Is that do we remove the tarmac to put this polymetric surface on? And I presume is it in any way sort of porous, allows puddles not to form, and would therefore be more frost-free? And also, is it sort of permeable so that we got more ground soaking for the water? I'm quite keen with the city with its flood issues. If we can expose any more surfaces of ground that will absorb water without causing any detriment to what's going on, is that at all possible? Does this surface do that? I don't understand what the polymetric is.
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Lawrence. It's something that we have discussed with the applicant, and it's our understanding that at the moment the surface, whilst being tarmac and concrete, does have some porous qualities to it, because water isn't pooling on the surface at the moment, nor is it flowing off the surface elsewhere. The new material, the polymetric surfacing, would be applied over the top, but during its installation, some holes would be bored into the existing base just to improve the drainage on the site as well. And hopefully that satisfies your concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Agar?
Thank you. It's good to see this application, really, because I think the facilities there have been looking a bit tired for some time. And as has been mentioned by Councillor Riaz, I think, there have been 1 or 2 injuries due to the fact the surface isn't what it should be, perhaps. I would just like to say, although it's not a planning matter, I do hope that the young ladies, that the girls and young women will have equal access to this, because I've seen a lot of young men and boys using this area, but I haven't seen any girls or young women using it, and it is council policy to provide equal access. So I hope you'll be ensuring that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Agar. That's a really good point, because we do need to think about inclusion for everybody in our play strategy and our play provision. Do I have any other comments or questions at all, please? So I can't see any. Councillor Cross?
Hi, just to comment on or to note that we've had very few responses or consultee responses, just the 3, the Highways, Landscape and WRS about nuisance, all saying no problem. And the question about flooding or porosity, surface porosity, was addressed in 7.29. So I see no complications, and I'm happy to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cross. Do I have anybody who'd be prepared to do a proposal for this project, so please? I don't know, Councillor Cross, would you like to do it? And who would like to second? Oh gosh, can we have shared seconders?
Whoever you want to choose.
Well, let's get some gender balance, shall we? Councillor Lawrence, how about you? Okay, great. Okay, let's move to a vote then, please. You've got to propose it.
Chair, I'm happy to propose that this be accepted as noted in the report.
Great. So based on that, let's move to a vote. Can I see hands in favour, please? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Wonderful. And that is the final application. So we are done. What about it? Oh, we have got any other business, please? Yes.
It's very brief. I mentioned last time in any other business about the members' annual site visit that was rearranged from September. We are looking to arrange it on the 29th of February. So have a look at your diaries for that. We've got some site visits where which will be circulated in due course, which I think will be very interesting to members to be able to see, not just externally and walk around, but actually we've got the ability to be able to go into 2 sites which are really quite interesting. So it's not just for planning committee members, it's for all members. So please pass the word around your groups and more details of that will be coming out shortly. It will be 29th and it will run between 10 o'clock and roughly about 1:30.
Just to check, so you say members, city council members, would parish council members be invited to this as well?
No, it will just be for city council members.
Thank you.